JBR Podcast.
Wake up and check it out.
Where music and life connects. Let's go.
We got Jack Semple, great guitar player. I've known of you since I was a kid, and I met you, it was probably just after you got a Juno Award back in the early 90s.
Wow.
You were playing in the Vancouver area, and I came in as a kid, and you gave me one of your cassettes, and I was just totally blown away by your skills. Like myself, I'm kind of like a simpleton blues guitar player, but you like nailed the blues and the jazz and the funk and all that stuff. So tell us,
That's great. How did I get started? Well, I have three older brothers. Two of them are musicians, not professional, but just, folk guitar strummers. And so they got me started playing a couple of tunes, three cowboy chords and stuff like that. And then I started taking lessons when I was 12. And by the time I was 15, I was teaching at the place that I was taking lessons at, and I was gigging already. So
Holy
I started
smokes.
professionally when I was 15.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And you were out of Saskatchewan, right, at that time?
Yeah. I grew up on a farm by Craven, Saskatchewan, and right next door to the Piepot First Nations Reserve. And so my playmates when I was a kid were all the kids who lived on the reserve. And so I was in a very interesting kind of border location, reserve on one side and kind of a German colony on the left. So I had lots of great experiences as a little kid on the farm. And
Wow.
I'm the youngest of 6 kids, so I got babied like crazy, and I got to practice instead of working on the farm.
You got to cut your guitar skills. So how did, like, when you started playing professionally, how did you get into the more national scene of things and get out of your local area?
Well, let me see. I started hanging out in a place called the Folk Guild, which was a folk club in Regina. And there I met tons of musicians. There was traveling musicians coming through. And so it was a great education as a young person, seeing these folk artists and whatnot. And then also just the people who ran the Folk Guild, they're all musicians. And we ended up going on the road. And when I was 18, I went on the road for I think at that time for an entire year, just playing bars. Back in those days, this is in the late 70s, there were 6-night-a-week gigs everywhere. And so I cut my teeth doing that, And then eventually, where I live in Regina, CBC had this show called Country West, which was a national country music variety show. And on that show, I was in the house band. So in that show, I got to play with Katie Lang and Ronnie Hawkins and Ian Tyson and just a whole raft of Canadian artists, which was really cool. Colin James, although he was from Regina, I knew him before that too. And then from there, I moved to Toronto. And after a while playing there, I moved with my family to Toronto to play with a band called the Lincolns, which were a really sensational, traditional R&B soul band. And I ended up being the lead singer and lead guitarist for that band and lived in Toronto for a few years. And anyways, that's kind of that's the short story for a long period of time.
Yeah, and then because your name is well known as well, because I know you as like the Jack Semple, and obviously looking into you, I heard about the Lincolns and those kind of things.
Right.
So when did you kind of break out on your solo career?
Well, it was after playing with the Lincolns. I just started a band. I called it the Jack Semple Band from, shameless self-promotion. And, I've always loved blues and soul music, a funky soul music. So that's the music I played and that's the music I wrote. And, I still really play the same stuff to this day.
That's awesome. And what are your main influences for guitar?
Oh, for right now, well, all you have to do is go on YouTube and see, people you've never heard of before who are just melting your face, I mean, that's both inspiring and depressing at the same time.
Yeah.
But as far as lifelong influences, B.B. King is one of them for sure. B.B. King, Stevie Ray Vaughan, of course, and Albert King. But B.B. King, I actually do a tribute to B.B. King where I learned a whole repertoire of his tunes with his solos and horn section and stuff, and because I love that music, and it's B.B. King played not a lot of notes, but man, it's still hard to try and play with that much soul. It's tough.
Yeah, Yeah, he was definitely in the pocket all the time.
All the
For
time.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And then vocals too, because you're so well known as a guitar player, but you're like an amazing singer too. And I feel
Oh.
like you've always gone underrated on that because your guitar playing has been so phenomenal. So who are your
Well, thank you.
influences there?
Oh, Stevie Wonder, George Benson. Uh, I'd have to say Stevie, Paul McCartney too. That's kind of rock and soul kind of sound. I've kind of been lucky because I've never really had to practice singing or anything. I mean, I'm conscious always of being in tune and being rhythmic. All the same principles apply to your voice that apply to your guitar playing, even
Yeah.
like rhythmically, if you sing rhythmically in the pocket, it's better.
Yeah.
So,
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, man. Like, so how many albums do you have out right now, and what projects do you have kind of coming down the pipe, if any?
Right. Oh yeah. Well, I'm eclectic. I've got 11 albums. Let's see,
Wow.
3 of them are original album electric guitar, records where I wrote all the tunes. One of them is an solo acoustic guitar instrumental album. One is a Argentinian tango CD with a violinist, this brilliant violinist named Ed Minevich, who was the concert master of the Regina Symphony here. Anyway, he was in love with that music. So I made a CD of that. I made a CD with my wife. My wife plays flute in the Regina Symphony. And we did a CD of all tunes by a friend of mine, Andrew Glover from Edmonton, who's a brilliant composer. And so anyways, it's fairly eclectic. There's lots of different styles. I made a Christmas CD. Right now, as far as new stuff, I'm writing music right now for a new project. I've got 3 projects on the go. Another solo instrumental guitar CD or recording collection. Yeah, I don't know if I'll make it into a CD or not. I want to make a traditional blues record where I play just the standards, because I love that music, and also another original, of my original writing.
Nice.
And my whole family, I have 2 daughters and a son who are all musicians. And so December 20th, this is a shameless plug. We're doing a concert at a hall called Dark Hall in Regina. And my family band is called the Gene Pool. And,
Oh, nice.
So we're doing a gig. That's a side project too, because they're all my kids and my wife are all musicians too.
Do you have any plans to tour again or get out on the road? And
Yeah, well, right now I'm doing a tribute to Gordon Lightfoot. He passed away a year ago last May, and that's how I learned how to play guitar when I was a teenager. Was learning Gordon Lightfoot songs and Red Shea licks and stuff. So I've been touring that in Saskatchewan and Alberta. I'm playing a whole bunch of gigs next month in Alberta. And I finished playing a bunch in Saskatchewan. I think my last one is on this coming Friday. Anyway, that's a thing that I'm doing. Once I get my once I get my new original CD completed, I'll hit the road, promoting that.
nice. And you kind of touched on, and I've said this on a few podcasts in the past, where you said there were 6-night-a-week gigs, and bands were touring all the time. Like, what challenges do you see now compared to those days in terms of getting out there and maybe setting up a tour? Because I know some places were full 6-night-a-weeks. There was front and back threes. It was a little easier to get out there and not break your back doing it, essentially.
Yeah. Well, those gigs don't exist anymore. The 6-night-a-week gigs don't exist. So you're lucky if you get 2 nights in a row. Like there's a place in Calgary called the Ironwood, which I love playing at. And that's usually 2 nights. But as far as, at least for me, getting a Monday night gig is very tough. Nobody goes out on a Monday night. Some of the concerts, these Gordon Lightfoot tributes that I'm doing, those are events. They're not just something you do on a Friday or Saturday, because those can be in the middle of the week. But, like blues touring, for example, I don't know of any Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night gigs, except for maybe the Commercial in Edmonton. Any place, maybe maybe there's a place in Winnipeg. I don't know, but it's rare, so it's tough to connect to tour.
No, it is. I actually just got back the other day from Calgary. I did 2 nights at the Blues Can, which was just down the street from the Ironwood. And
Right.
and that's true. As a guy that's myself just straight up blues, essentially, there's not a lot. It's all private house parties and,
Yeah.
things like that. So it's great to always talk with guys like you and see what it's like, because I don't tour like I used to. 20 years ago, I was out there a lot, not on a high level or anything like that, but there was a lot of gigs out there. And
Yeah.
now they're just, you can't, I get a lot of interest, but it's like, I can't, fly or drive halfway
Yeah.
across the country for 2 nights.
Yeah. Well,
It's
one thing I
crazy.
started doing during the pandemic, after about 6 months of twiddling my thumbs, I started this backyard barbecue strategy where, I just advertise on the internet, that I'll come to your backyard with your 10 friends, which you were only allowed to have 10 people, in a gathering. So I did lots of those, and that was just me and a little PA
Smart.
system. And so I still continue to do that too, even now. But I mean, when there was no gigs during the pandemic, that was a way to gig, and I know other people who did the same thing. And
Yeah.
it's cool. I mean, it's kind of like a house party, a bit,
For sure. Yeah. It's quite intimate. It's funny how things pivot like that. And, there's always, where there's a will, there's a way to find a gig and keep
Yeah.
working, essentially.
Well, the musicians, you have to be a hustler. You have to, shake the bushes for gigs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was talking about that with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with JW Jones, but he was on and we talked about that exact thing where it was like, 90% of your time is, on the computer hustling gigs and doing
Oh, man.
promotion. And the
Yeah, no
10%
kidding.
is like, yeah, we would always say, like, when I toured with Russell Jackson, it was like, at the end of the night when you're slugging your gear out at 2 a.m., it's like, this is what we're getting paid for.
Oh, yeah.
Because the last
Oh,
4
yeah.
hours was pretty fun. Yeah.
You got it.
No, it's tough for sure to get out there. Like, what advice do you have for younger people that get into it? I feel like I got into it when a few years before all that 6-night front 3 back 3 kind of all dried up, and then it kind of just went to shit essentially. And I see a lot of some younger guys, not as many as when I was growing up, trying to get into it. And I think, man, the challenges that they must be going through now.
Yeah. Well,
it's crazy.
It is crazy. But there are musicians who play music for fun with their buddies on the weekends, But then there are people who are very dedicated and who are going to do it come hell or high water. And those are the guys who are surviving, because you have to have that much passion and commitment. And the bands that I see, I live in Regina. The bands who I see who are playing here are hustling their own gigs. They're booking their own venue. They're selling their own tickets, putting on their own show. And you talk about work. It takes more work to do that than it does to play the gig. But and they're doing it, and they'll go town to town doing this very thing. Sometimes I think sometimes young people are criticized for being on TikTok and wasting their lives on social media, but all you got to do is open YouTube to see how many incredible young players there are. There are still as many, if not more, than there ever was. I suppose the internet just allows you to see them, but you still see the odd 14-year-old person just keep playing their ass off, and it's because music is a passion, and some people get the passion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I feel like technology's been really great for that, to be able to, get that kind of exposure out there and get the young guys going. But I do miss the days of the agents, because I feel like, those guys that just do it for the weekend or do it for fun, they're winding up in the same venues, getting a same Friday night as a guy that's like an award-winning touring guy that has like ample experience. And I always say this to club owners that, when they go, oh, well, music doesn't work, I tried it for 3 months. And I said, well, when you serve filet mignon on a Friday and then, mac and cheese on Saturday, well, your crowd, you're never going to get a consistency for people to want to eat at your venue. And when you do that with music, you wind up in the same boat. You have a great guy on a world-class musician on a Friday, and not to talk down to the garage guys, but back in the day, I remember the ABC rooms, the agents would say, hey, you're at this pay scale and you play these rooms because you're just not at that level yet, right? Go woodshed it. And I feel like that's part of why people just I see it locally where they don't necessarily support music as much because they just don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And those venues that used to have a clientele don't exist. And like you say, guys go out and they have to pound the ground to drive their own business out there rather than, you know, the days of the Yale in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Didn't matter who was there a lot of the times. People would just show up because they knew there was a great band. Yes, a guy like you would come to town and you would draw people in, but a guy like me would play and people would go, well, I know there's going to be an okay band. They're going to,
Yeah.
you know,
I know what you mean. It's standard. Well, I wouldn't want to run a live music venue right now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a place in Regina, for example, called the Revival Music Room. And it's exactly what it says. It's got a fantastic stage with great lights and a great PA system. I mean, it's like the classic place you go to see a band. It sounds good, it looks good, everything's great about it. And he's open 1 or 2 nights a week. That's it. You know, and most of the time it's a tribute band of some kind. You know, because that's really popular. It does, you know, Dark Side of the Moon, Elvis. You know, I mean, the Beatles. There's lots of Beatles tributes. There's tributes of every kind. It's just all about entertainment. I mean, I'm doing one. I'm doing a Gordon Lightfoot one mainly because I want to pay tribute to one of the greatest songwriters who ever lived, and his music really means something to me. You know, it's not a cash grab. It's an actual. It's something I really feel strongly and passionately about.
Yeah, and I think to me that's cool. I've never been a fan of the tribute bands, but when you're talking about Gordon Lightfoot versus me going like, hey, I'm starting an AC/DC tribute band, you know, like there's 100 of them across the country, right? I think it's cool that, you know, you're doing something and a lot of people might not, you know, they're going to get educated at the same time as opposed to, you know.
Yeah, I know. Well, I did go to see one tribute band at the local casino here. I have to plug in my iPad. My battery's getting low. Sorry, hang on a second.
Yeah, no worries.
And it was a bunch of musicians. They were doing the other side of Abbey Road. You know, the Abbey Road, the Beatle record with the medley, and it was great. It was like listening to classical music or something. You know, in classical music, you don't improvise on the parts. You play what's written, what the composer wrote, and that's what these guys did. They played. It sounded so much like the original recording. All the sounds and everything, and the vocals. It was really cool to see.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds amazing. So do you teach for people or anything like that?
I did during the pandemic, but I kind of retired from teaching last year. So what I'm doing now, that the amount of time that I had spent teaching, I would teach like 3 or 4 nights a week, 4 hours a night. So instead of teaching now, I'm putting those 4 hours to use promoting myself, promoting gigs, making new material, that kind of stuff. Because like I've taught a lot of lessons in my day. I mean, that's basically how I supported my family when I was young. You know, I mean, both my wife and I, we each had 30 or 40 students each a week, every week, plus playing gigs and stuff. You know, but I have an empty nest now. My kids are all adults. I don't really need the same cash flow. Although, ironically, I'm doing better now not teaching than when I was teaching, because teaching takes time, takes your energy. You know, I mean, it's great. I love interacting with people, and I take lessons too. There's lots of internet lessons. This place called True Fire. I've been taking some lessons with this player from New York. That's very inspiring, and it's good to get new links.
Nice. So, what kind of like for guitar, like what technique would you recommend? Like for a guitar player, because I hear it sometimes with hands, you know, and I'm so not a technical guy. I'm all by ear. So even for my own self-serving interests, like what kind of, you know,
well, I mean, you know, learning an instrument, there's an infinite amount of information in every angle to learn, right? So obviously you can't learn it all. So you just like what you have to ask yourself, what do I want to do? How do I want to play? You know, like one avenue is like in playing blues. You learn Albert King, B.B. King, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Freddie King. You learn all those licks of all those guys, learn all those songs, and you immerse yourself in that. And then when you play, you forget it all and just play whatever comes out. You know that. But on the other hand, like I'm into all kinds of different music. You know, like the lessons I was taking from the Frank Vignola is his name, but from New York City. We had an internet lesson. So I played a bit for him, and he said, "Okay, try this." So this is a conceptual thing. Instead of learning licks, like country licks or blues licks, this is more general music. He said, instead of thinking across the neck this way when you're playing, think of it this way. Think of it from the 1st fret to the 12th fret, or however many frets you got. And he gave me one exercise that took me about 6 weeks to learn, and that was to learn every interval, in other words, seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, and sevenths, on every pair of strings in all 12 keys. Now,
Wow.
that's a huge amount of work, because you actually have to map it out, right? You have to map out all this stuff. And you think, well, when am I ever going to use this? Well, along the way, you discover all this cool stuff you never would have discovered if you hadn't looked, the way. And I think that was the point of it, to do something you haven't done before, open up some doors and discover new stuff. So now when I play, my palette is much wider. There's a lot more stuff. Like I don't mind playing on the 6th and the 4th strings together, like in 6ths or 7ths or something. It was something you'd never do. But anyways, that's just one thing. Then there's picking technique. Like last night I was watching this gypsy jazz guy. Have you ever checked out gypsy jazz guitar technique?
No.
It's very different from blues, rock, or country. It's Django Reinhardt, that kind of music.
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole school of playing that's just that, and it has a very specific right hand picking technique, which I find fascinating. Like I don't use a pick; I have acrylic fingernails.
Yeah.
And so playing single notes is a challenge for me, because your fingernails grow. So imagine if you had a different shaped pick every time you pick up your guitar.
Yeah.
But I have a nail file, and I quaff it to the right shape, and when it's right, it's like the guitar is part of my anatomy.
Wow.
And so there's all kinds of limitations, but there's also advantages. So it's I kind of live in that world where whenever I see a guitar player, the first thing I do is I look at their right hand technique and check it out and see how are they doing it, because everybody is different. George Benson holds his pick, like this and plays. The gypsy jazz guys bend their wrists like this and pick away, and the country guys, they hold their hands here and play like banjo stuff. It's a nice little hobby and a science for me.
Yeah, no, and that's probably what makes you at the next level of the guitar player, those little nuances that most people, you look past, right? It's like being in the studio and, it only takes like 1/10 of a millisecond to make something sound in or out, sometimes, on things, right? That a guy maybe just can't. That's where I guess technology kind of helps us but hurts us at the same time, because
Sure.
It can help you when you make a mistake, but then everybody relies on it and you wind up with a world of fabricated artists. But
I know that's
it's a little different. Yeah. So outside of music, like what are your passions?
Outside of music, well, my family. What are my passions? I think I only got one passion.
It's all music related. Yeah.
Well, what I think about every day, I mean, other than normal life stuff, is I'm constantly thinking of songs, and I'm constantly, like, every morning I wake up, there's either a new song in my head or some old nasty earworm, and so we recently bought a cottage, and so I bought a campfire guitar to take out there, like just a $200 guitar to have out there, and so I put it in open G tuning. Which is, when you put it in an open tuning, not all your licks don't work anymore. You got to come up with new stuff. So I started writing this tune. It's one of the coolest songs I've ever stumbled upon. It was just accident. But, I'm sitting up on the back porch drinking coffee first thing in the morning, and I go, wow, that's cool. And so it's going to be a song. And I pretty much think of that all the time. I'm not really into sports. Uh, I try not to watch American political news, but I mean, talk about a
You can't get a.
tumultuous situation. I mean, it's both frustrating and fascinating at the same time.
Yeah, it's almost like a car accident. You don't want to watch, but you can't look away.
Well, there's some big. November 5th is going to be a big day
Oh, I know.
worldwide.
I've been watching it because I work remotely at home, and I kind of have the news on in the background all the time, just because try to stay attuned to it and stuff. But you say campfires and you got a cabin and stuff, so you obviously like the outdoors. If you got a cabin,
Oh
you want
yeah.
to be around
Oh well,
campfires.
that is one. Yes, I love the outdoors. I love hiking. Um, I love being out in nature. Like my family homesteaded. My father is a Scottish immigrant. He was born in 1895, and
Oh
he
wow.
farmed. He moved to Saskatchewan after he was in World War One, and lived as a farmer about near Craven, like as I was saying, and lived there for like 25 years, and then got married and had 6 kids. So I'm the youngest. He passed away when I was 7, but all my siblings and I had a very strong, stable family situation, and the farm was right by the Qu'Appelle Valley, and in the prairies it's kind of flat. There's not much variation and contrast, except the valley. There's all these ravines, and each ravine is kind of like an island with unique plant species and whatnot. And I love going there. I often go there in the summertime and have a sleepover just under the stars. And I'm passionate about that, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And I bring it up because when you mentioned it, I love the outdoors and camping, hiking, hunting, fishing. I'm all for it.
Oh yeah,
If you can
yeah,
get disconnect, as much as I love technology and a packed bar and a good party,
yeah.
there's nothing better than just getting out there with the people
Oh,
closest to you and not being around anything but Mother
true,
Nature
true.
itself.
Solitude. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I've never really taken a guitar around campfires. People have asked me that before, and I've always thought, I have a Martin at home, but I think it was over $1,000 for the guitar. So I'm like, yeah, it's not the kind of guitar I want to drag to a
No.
campfire.
Well, when I say campfire, like I bought a nylon string guitar. You put a nylon string guitar
Oh yeah.
like five
Yeah, I
five
know.
feet from a campfire, forget it. It's
Yeah.
out of tune immediately. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I just mean a clunker that you can have, and if it falls
Yeah.
over, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Who cares? Yeah. It's not a big deal at that point. Yeah. No. Is there any other projects or shameless self-promotion you want to do for
Uh,
things coming down the pipe?
Not really. I mean, I have an agent in Lawrence, Kansas, who I've been working with for a number of years. And so, when COVID hit, there was no gigs anywhere, of course. But Trump put up the cover charge to get into the United States by double. I mean, visas and stuff, it's really expensive to get there. Like paid for a P2 visa permit for my trio, which cost $5,000. So before you even play your first note, you're down $5,000. So anyways, I have played in the States quite a bit, but not since COVID, because it's prohibitive. I mean, things are coming back, but they still are kind of slow to come back. I plan on playing more down there again, and once I have a new recording, I'm going to hit the road here and travel across the country.
Yeah, no, that's good, because I mentioned to a few people here that I was going to be doing a podcast with you, and they're like, well, ask him when he's coming back to BC. Right. So if you got things out here, there's definitely a lot of interest for you to come back this way. But in regards to the States, I remember the P2 visas, and I haven't really played the States on a visa. I've gone down there and kind of done stuff, at no cost or promotion stuff. So I haven't needed to get a visa, but I remember the days of, getting the visa, and you could get pickup gigs with it. And some of the guys I was talking to were like, oh no, if you get it and you get offered gigs, you're stuck to the gigs that you've booked on that visa for now. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Really? Like, you can't.
Oh yeah. If you get caught playing a gig that isn't on your itinerary, you're out of the country.
That's just, isn't it totally different for Americans though? They can come up to Canada and they don't, it's just so much easier for them. They come up here and it's almost like they're a Canadian citizen, and that our
Totally. It's easier to go play Europe than it is to play, like I only live an hour and a half from the American border, but it's easier for me to go play gigs there than it is to play in the States.
Yeah, well, I know I'm probably 25 minutes from the border in Washington State, and I'd done some stuff with the Washington Blues Society, and it was like, well, I'll come down and play, but like it's on my own dime, like don't pay me. I don't want to get banned from the country. And go down there, and they're like, come back. I'm like you say, I'm like, it's just too much of a headache for what I would have got. Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And like I say, I haven't done it for almost 25 years now, but it's unfortunate that that's the case, because it's not like we're taking work away from people.
No, there's so many incredible musicians down there. I mean, it's the birthplace of rock and roll, blues, jazz, country, bluegrass. I mean, they've contributed a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
To culture.
How do people see where you're going to be at?
I just updated my website, jacksemple.com, and I'm terrible at but I've just updated it. Also on Facebook. Just go to Facebook, and all my shameless self-promotion is there. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll definitely put your website and your Facebook links and stuff in the descriptions of these things. So for those that watch the podcast, they'll be able to connect with you if that's of interest for them. I'm playing the Festival Place in Edmonton, November 22nd. Festival Place is this beautiful theater. It's really a beautiful place. So and that's what it's called? A Festival Place, yeah. Okay, nice. It's in Edmonton. Well, it's in Sherwood Park, which is, part of Edmonton. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, nice. So that's November 22nd? 22, yeah, 22nd. 22, November 22nd. Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely throw that out for some people. Where do you live? Where are you situated? I'm just outside of Vancouver. Oh, yeah. One of the suburbs of the Vancouver area. Yeah. I used to play the Yale all the time, but since the Yale... doesn't have music. Does it have music anymore? No, the Yale's done. Actually, I played there the last night it was open with Dave Gogo, Jimmy D. Lane, and Tim Vaughn. I think he's from out your way or something. Yeah, no, that closed down probably almost 15 years ago. I think 2011, I guess it was. But yeah, and when I first met you, when I was just like a kid, that was at Jake O'Grady's, if you remember that place. I love that place. That was a great place to play. Yeah, no, it was good actually, and it was a guy named Greg Thompson that got me in there. He was running it at the time. I know Greg very well. He's from Regina. Yeah, absolutely, he is. Yeah, I'm playing with him this Sunday. He runs a jam out in Mission area and stuff. Yeah, say hello to him for me. I will, absolutely. And if you're ever interested in coming out to BC, there are a few things in the burbs. Not like downtown doesn't have anything, so. Right. You could probably line something up. There's a few places like JW Jones is coming in doing, there's a guy that does some private events. He has a nice big hall that holds a couple hundred people. There's the Blue Frog, a few pubs that, you could probably pick up maybe a weekday. I have played the Blue Frog a few times in the last couple of years. That's a great gig. Yeah, that's a cool place as well. So there's a few things if you get on the road again and you want to come out this way, by all means, not that I can help too much, but Oh, that'd be great. Greg probably could. He's good at that stuff. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate you taking the time to come on, and maybe we'll catch you further on down the road, and I'll definitely keep my eyes out on what you're doing. Great. Well, it's nice to talk to you. Thanks so much for this. Yeah. You as well. Cheers. Okay. Cheers, soon. Man. Okay. You bet. Bye. Bye-bye.